Dattatreya, a son of Anusura and Atri, the Vedic sage attributed with writing Mandala 5 of the Rigveda. Dattatreya is the brother of Patanjali, best known for the Yoga Sutra and Devasa, also a recognized Vedic sage. Dattatreya's philosophical works include the Tripura Rahasya, Advaita Gita, the Dattatreya Yoga Shastra and Jivanmukta Gita. Yet, his philosophy was incorporated into a broad range of Vedanta and Tantric literary works. The Advaita includes the Dattatreya Upanishad. The Narada Parivrahaka and Sandalya Upanishads of the Advaita refer to him. The Advaita Upanishad of the Krishna Yajurveda, the Bhikshuka, Jabala, Muktika, and Yajnavalkya Upanishads of the Shukla Yajurveda, as well as the Jabaladasana and Rudraksha Jabala Upanishads of the Samaveda, all refer to Dattatreya. And Bhagavata, Brahmanda, Brahma, Brahmavavata, Datta, Garuda, Markandeya, Narada, Padma, Vayu, Vishnu and perhaps other Puranas refer to Dattatreya or his philosophy. Srimad Bhagavatam refers to him in cantos 1, 4, and 11 and also within the Adharva Gita. So too do the Akshaya Tritiya Parasurama Jayanti, Bhishma Gita, Gandharva Tantra, Mahanavana Tantra and Mahashodhanaya Arsa. Dattatreya claimed to be the disciple of no human guru, announcing instead the following 24 teachers from nature: the earth, air or breeze, sky, fire, the sun, pigeon, python, sea, moth, elephant, and fish, Pingala the courtesan, arrow maker, infant, or playful boy, the moon, honeybee, deer, bird of prey, maiden, serpent, spider, caterpillar and water. Modern theories, such as the holographic universe, multiple universes, time-space relativity, quantum entanglement, particle-wave duality and the many hypotheses resulting from the double-slit experiment all seem to have roots in the philosophy of Dattatreya and his mother's brother, Sage Kapila. What follows is an excerpt from Tripura Rahasya, also known as the Haritayana Samhita, relaying the story of Ganda Hill, otherwise known as the Story of the Hill City, written down by Sage Haritayana, as it was retold to him by his teacher, Sage Parasurama, Bhargava, who received it first-hand from Dattatreya. The Story of the Hill City, an excerpt from Tripura Rahasya, translated by Swami Ramanananda Saraswathi. Even after listening to Dattatreya patiently, Parasurama was still perplexed and asked, "O Lord, what you have said so far about the universe is the truth. Even so, how is it that it appears to be real to me, and to others who are both intelligent and shrewd? Why does it continue to seem to be real to me, even though I have heard you say otherwise? Please prove to me its unreality and remove my present illusion." This requested, Dattatreya, the great sage, began to explain the cause of the illusion which makes one believe the world to be real. "Listen, Rama. This illusion is very old, being no other than the deep-rooted ignorance which mistakes one thing for another. See how the true self has been ignored, and the body has become identified with the self. Consider this foul body comprised of blood and bones beside that unblemished, pure intelligence. Even the gross body becomes mistaken for crystal clear consciousness by mere force of habit. So also the universe has repeatedly been taken to be real, so that it now looks as if it were actually real. The remedy lies in a change of outlook. The world becomes for one, whatever one is accustomed to think it. This is borne out by the realization of yogis, and of the objects of their long contemplation. I shall illustrate this point by an ancient and wonderful incident. There is a very holy town, Sundara, in the country of Vanga. Here once lived a very wise and famous king, Susena by name. His younger brother, Mahasena, was his loyal and dutiful subject. The king ruled his kingdom so well that all his subjects loved him. On one occasion he performed the horse sacrifice. Note: this sacrifice can be performed only by the most powerful kings. A horse chosen and dedicated for sacrifice is allowed to roam wherever it pleases. The sacrificer or his lieutenant or group of lieutenants follows the horse at a distance. The horse is a challenge to the kings in whose country it roams, so that battles are fought until the horse is successfully brought back and the sacrifice performed. All the most valiant princes followed the horse with a great army. Their course was victorious until they reached the banks of the Irrawaddy. They were so elated that they passed by the peacefully sitting royal sage Gana, without saluting him. Gana's son noticed the insult to his father and was exasperated. He caught the sacrificial horse, and fought the heroes guarding it. They surrounded him on all sides, but he, together with the horse, entered the hill Ganda, before their eyes. Noticing his disappearance in the hill, the invaders attacked the hill. The sage's son reappeared with a huge army, fought the enemy, defeated them and destroyed Susina's army. He took many prisoners of war, including all the princes, and then re-entered the hill. A few followers who escaped fled to Susina, and told him everything. Susina was surprised and said to his brother, "Brother, go to the place of the sage Gana. Remember that penance doers are wonderfully powerful, and cannot be conquered even by gods. Therefore take care to please him, so that you may be allowed to bring back the princes and the horse in time for the sacrifice which is fast approaching." Pride before sages will always be humbled. If enraged, they can reduce the world to ashes. Approach him with respect, so that our object may be fulfilled. Mahasina obeyed and immediately started on his errand. He arrived at Gana's hermitage, and found the sage seated peacefully like a rock, with his senses, mind and intellect under perfect control. The sage, who was immersed in the self, looked like a calm sea whose waves of thought had quieted down. Mahasina spontaneously fell prostrate before the sage, and began to sing his praises, and here he remained for 3 days in reverential attitude. The sage's son, who had been watching the new visitor, was pleased, and coming to him said, "I am pleased with the respect you show for my father. Tell me what I can do for you and I will do it at once. I am the son of this great Gana, the unique hermit. Prince, listen to me. This is not the time for my father to speak. He is now in Kavala Nirvikalpa Samadhi, and will come out of it only after 12 years, of which 5 have already passed and 7 yet remain. Tell me now what you desire from him, and I will do it for you. Do not underestimate me, and think that I am only a headstrong youth not worthy of my father. There is nothing impossible for yogis engaged in penance." After hearing him, Mahasina, being wise, saluted him with clasped hands and said, "O child of the sage, if you mean to fulfill my desire, I want to make a short request to your wise father when he has come out of his samadhi. Kindly help me to that end if you please." After he had thus requested, the sage's son replied, "King, your request is hard to grant. Having promised fulfillment of your desire, I cannot now go back on my word. I must now ask you to wait an hour and a half and watch my yogic power. This, my father, is now in transcendental peace. Who can wake him up by external efforts? Wait. I shall do it forthwith by means of subtle yoga." Saying so, he sat down, withdrew his senses, united the ingoing and outgoing breaths, exhaled air and stopped motionless for a short time. In this way he entered the mind of the sage, and after agitating it, re-entered his own body. Immediately the sage came to his senses, and found Mahasina in front of him, prostrating and praising him. He thought for a moment, taking in the whole situation by his extraordinary powers. Perfectly peaceful and cheerful in mind, he beckoned to his son and said to him, "Boy, do not repeat this fault. Wrath wrecks penance. Penance is only possible and can progress without obstruction, because the king protects yogis. To interfere with the sacrifice is always reprehensible, and never to be countenanced by the good. Be a good boy and return the horse and the princes immediately. Do it at once, so that the sacrifice may be performed at the appointed hour." Directed thus, the sage's son was immediately appeased. He went into the hill, returned with the horse and the princes, and released them with pleasure. Mahasina sent the princes with the horse to the town. He was surprised at what he saw, and saluting the sage asked him respectfully, "Lord, please tell me how the horse and the princes were concealed in the hill." Then the sage replied, "Listen, O king, I was formerly an emperor ruling the empire bounded by the seas. After a long while the grace of God descended on me, and I grew disgusted with the world as being but trash in the light of consciousness within. I abdicated the kingdom in favor of my sons and retired into this forest. My wife, being dutiful, accompanied me here. Several years were passed in our penance and austerities. Once my wife embraced me, and this son was born to her when I was in Samadhi. She brought me to my senses, left the babe with me and died. This boy was brought up by me with love and care. When he grew up, he heard that I had once been a king. He wished to be one also, and besought me to grant his prayer. I initiated him in yoga, which he practiced with such success that he was able by the force of his will to create a world of his own in this hill which he is now ruling. The horse and princes were kept there. I have now told you the secret of that hill." After hearing it, Mahasina asked again, "I have with great interest heard your wonderful account of this hill. I want to see it. Can you grant my prayer?" Being so requested, the sage commanded his son, saying, "Boy, show him round the place and satisfy him." Having said this, the sage again lapsed into Samadhi, and his son went away with the king. The sage's son entered the hill without trouble and disappeared, but Mahasina was not able to enter. So he called out for the sage's son. He too called out to the king from the interior of the hill. Then he came out of it and said to the king, "O king, this hill cannot be penetrated with the slender yogic powers that you possess. You will find it too dense. Nevertheless, you must be taken into it as my father ordered. Now, leave your gross body in this hole covered with bushes. Enter the hill with your mental sheath along with me." The king could not do it and asked, "Tell me, saint, how I am to throw off this body. If I do it forcibly, I shall die." The saint smiled at this and said, "You do not seem to know yoga. Well, close your eyes." The king closed his eyes. The saint forthwith entered into him, took the other subtle body and left the gross body in the hole. Then by his yogic power the saint entered the hill with this subtle body snatched from the other, which was filled with the desire of seeing the empire within the bowels of the hill. Once inside, he roused up the sleeping individual to dream. The latter now found himself held by the saint in the wide expanse of ether. Note: the Ativahika Sarira, astral body, is exhaustively treated in Yoga Vasishta. He was alarmed on looking in all directions, and requested the saint, "Do not forsake me lest I should perish in this illimitable space." The saint laughed at his terror and said, "I shall never forsake you. Be assured of it. Now look round at everything, and have no fear." The king took courage, and looked all round. He saw the sky above, enveloped in the darkness of night and shining with stars. He ascended there and looked down below. He came to the region of the moon, and was benumbed with cold. Protected by the saint, he went up to the sun, and was scorched by its rays. Again tended by the saint, he was refreshed, and saw the whole region a counterpart of the heaven. He went up to the summits of the Himalayas with the saint, and was shown the whole region, and also the earth. Again endowed with powerful eyesight, he was able to see far-off lands, and discovered other worlds besides this one. In the distant worlds there was darkness prevailing in some places. The earth was gold in some. There were oceans and island continents traversed by rivers and mountains. There were the heavens peopled by Indra and the gods, the Asuras, human beings, the Rakshasas and other races of celestials. He also found that the saint had divided himself as Brahma in Satyaloka, as Vishnu in Vaikuntha, and as Siva in Kailasa, while all the time he remained as his original self, the king ruling in the present world. The king was struck with wonder on seeing the yogic power of the saint. The sage's son said to him, "This sightseeing has lasted only a single day according to the standards prevailing here, whereas 12,000 years have passed by in the world you are used to. So let us return to my father." Saying so, he helped the other to come out of the hill to this outer world. The sage's son made the king sleep, united his subtle body with the gross one left in the hole, and then woke him up. On regaining his senses, Mahasina found the whole world changed. The people, the river courses, the trees, the tanks, etc., were all different. He was bewildered, and asked the saint, "O great one, how long have we spent seeing your world? This world looks different from the one I was accustomed to." This asked, the sage's son said to Mahasina, "Listen, king, this is the world which we were in, and left to see that within the hill. The same has undergone enormous changes owing to the long interval of time. We spent only one day looking round the hill region. The same interval counts for 12,000 years in this land, and it has accordingly changed enormously. Look at the difference in the manners of the people and their languages. Such changes are natural. I have often noticed similar changes before. Look here. This is the Lord, my father in Samadhi. Here you stood before, praising my father and praying to him. There you see the hill in front of you. By this time, your brother's progeny has increased to thousands. What was Vanga, your country, with Sundara, your capital, is now a jungle infested with jackals and wild animals. There is now one Virabahu in your brother's line who has his capital, Visala, on the banks of the Tripura in the country of Malwa. In your line, there is Susama whose capital is Vardhana in the country of the Dravidas, on the banks of the Tamaraharani. Such is the course of the world which cannot remain the same even for a short time. For in this period, the hills, rivers, lakes, and the contour of the earth have altered. Mountains subside, plains heave high, deserts become fertile, plateaux change to sandy tracts, rocks decompose and become salt, clay hardens sometimes, cultivated farms become barren, and barren lands are brought under tillage, precious stones become valueless, and trinkets become invaluable, salt water becomes sweet and potable waters become brackish. Some lands contain more people than cattle, others are infested with wild beasts, and yet others are invaded by venomous reptiles, insects and vermin. Such are some of the changes that happen on the earth in course of time. But there is no doubt that this is the same earth as we were in before. Mahasina heard all that the sage's son said and fainted from the shock. Then being brought round by his companion, he was overcome by grief, and mourned the loss of his royal brother and brother's son, and of his own wife and children. After a short time, the sage's son assuaged his grief with wise words. Being a sensible man, why do you mourn, and at whose loss? A sensible man never does anything without a purpose. To act without discernment is childish. Think now, and tell me what loss grieves you, and what purpose your grief will serve. Asked thus, Mahasina, who was still inconsolable, retorted, "Great sage that you are, can you not understand the cause of my sorrow? How is it that you seek the reason of my grief, when I have lost my all? A man is generally sad when only one in his family dies. I have lost all my friends and relatives, and you still ask me why I am sad." The sage's son continued derisively, "King, tell me now, is this lapse into sorrow a hereditary virtue? Will it result in sin, if you do not indulge in it on this occasion? Or do you hope to recover your loss by such grief? King, think well and tell me what you gain by your sorrow. If you consider it irresistible, listen to what I say. Such loss is not fresh. Your forefathers have died before. Have you ever mourned their loss? If you say that it is because of the blood relationship that now causes your grief, were there not worms in the bodies of your parents, living on their nourishment? Why are they not your relatives, and why does not their loss cause you sorrow? King, think. Who are you? Whose deaths are the cause of your present grief? Are you the body, or other than that? The body is simply a conglomerate of different substances. Harm to any one of the constituents is harm to the whole. There is no moment in which each of the components is not changing. But the excretions do not constitute a loss to the body. Those whom you called your brother, and so on, are mere bodies. The bodies are composed of earth. When lost, they return to earth, and earth resolves ultimately into energy. Where then is the loss? In fact, you are not the body. You own the body, and call it your own, just as you do to a garment you happen to possess. Where lies the difference between your body and your garment? Have you any doubts regarding this conclusion? Being other than your own body, what relation is there between you and another body? Did you ever claim similar relationship, say with your brother's clothes? Why then mourn over the loss of bodies, which are in no way different from garments? You speak of me body, me eyes, me life, me mind, and so on. I ask you now to tell me what precisely you are. Being confronted thus, Mahasina began to think over the matter, and unable to solve the problem, he asked leave to consider it carefully. Then he returned and said with all humility, Lord, I do not see who I am. I have considered the matter, and still I do not understand. My grief is only natural. I cannot account for it. Master, seek your protection. Kindly tell me what it is. Everyone is overpowered by grief when his relative dies. No one seems to know his own self, nor does one mourn all losses. Submit to you as your disciple. Please elucidate this matter to me. Being thus requested, the sage's son spoke to Mahasina. King, listen. People are deluded by the illusion cast by Her Divine Majesty. They partake of misery, that is due to the ignorance of their selves. Their misery is meaningless. As long as the ignorance of the self lasts, so long will there be misery. Just as a dreamer is foolishly alarmed at his own dreams, or as a fool is deluded by the serpents created in a magic performance, so also the man ignorant of the self is terrified. Just as the dreamer awakened from his fearful dream, or the man attending the magic performance informed of the unreal nature of the magic creations, no longer fears them, but ridicules another who does, so also unaware of the self, not only does not grieve, but also laughs at another's grief. Therefore, O valiant hero, batter down this impregnable fortress of illusion, and conquer your misery by realization of the self. In the meantime, be discriminating and not so foolish. After hearing the sage's son, Mahasina said, Master, your illustration is not to the point. Dream or magic is later realized to be illusory, whereas this hard concrete universe is always real and purposeful. This is unassailed and persistent. How can it be compared to the evanescent dream? Then the sage's son answered, Listen to what I say. Your opinion that the illustration is not to the point is a double delusion, like a dream in a dream. Note, the commentary says that the first illusion is the idea of separateness of the universe from oneself, and that the second is the idea that dream objects are an illusion in contradistinction to those seen while awake. This is compared to the illusion that a dreamer mistakes the dream rope for a dream serpent. The dream is itself an illusion, and the mistake is an illusion in the illusion. Consider the dream as a dreamer would, and tell me whether the trees do not afford shade to the pedestrians and bear fruits for the use of others. Is the dream realized to be untrue, and evanescent in the dream itself? Do you mean to say that the dream is rendered false after waking from it? Is not the waking world similarly rendered false in your dream or deep sleep? Do you contend that the waking state is not so, because there is continuity in it after you wake up? Is there no continuity in your dreams from day to day? If you say that it is not evident, tell me whether the continuity in the wakeful world is not broken up every moment of your life. Do you suggest that the hills, the seas and the earth itself are really permanent phenomena, in spite of the fact that their appearance is constantly changing? Is not the dream world also similarly continuous with its earth, mountains, rivers, friends, and relatives? Do you still doubt its abiding nature? Then extend the same reasoning to the nature of the wakeful world, and know it to be equally evanescent. The ever-changing objects like the body, trees, rivers and islands are easily found to be transitory. Even mountains are not immutable, for their contours change owing to the erosion of waterfalls and mountain torrents, ravages by men, boars and wild animals, insects, thunder, lightning, storms and so on. You will observe similar change in the seas and on earth. Therefore I tell you that you should investigate the matter closely. You will probably argue as follows. Dream and wakefulness resemble each other in their discontinuous harmony, like a chain made up of links. There is no unbroken continuity in any object, because every new appearance implies a later disappearance. But continuity cannot be denied in the fundamentals underlying the objects. Because a dream creation is obliterated and rendered false by present experience, what distinction will you draw between the fundamentals underlying the dream objects and the present objects? If you say that the dream is an illusion, and its fundamentals are equally so, whereas the present creation is not so obliterated, and its fundamentals must therefore be true, I ask you what illusion is? It is determined by the transitory nature, which is nothing but appearance to, and disappearance from, our senses. Is not everything obliterated in deep sleep? If you maintain, however, that mutual contradiction is unreliable as evidence, and so proves nothing, it amounts to saying that self-evident sight alone furnishes the best proof. Quite so, people like you do not have a true insight into the nature of things. Therefore take my word for it, the present world is only similar to the dream world. Long periods pass in dreams also. Therefore, purposefulness and enduring nature are in every way similar to both states. Just as you are obviously aware in your waking state, so also you are in your dream state. These two states being so similar, why do you not mourn the loss of your dream relations? The wakeful universe appears so real to all only by force of habit. If the same be imagined vacuous, it will melt away into the void. One starts imagining something, then contemplates it, and by continuous or repeated association resolves that it is true, and less contradicted. In that way, the world appears real in the manner one is used to it. My world that you visited furnishes the proof thereof. Come now, let us go round the hill and see. Saying so, the sage's son took the king, went round the hill and returned to the former spot. Then he continued, Look, O king, the circuit of the hill is hardly 2.5 miles, and yet you have seen a universe within it. Is it real or false? Is it a dream or otherwise? What has passed as a day in that land has counted for 12,000 years here. Which is correct? Think, and tell me. Obviously you cannot distinguish this from a dream, and cannot help concluding that the world is nothing but imagination. My world will disappear instantly, if I cease contemplating it. Therefore convince yourself of the dream-like nature of the world, and do not indulge in grief at your brother's death. Just as the dream creations are pictures moving on the mind screens, so also this world, including yourself, is the obverse of the picture depicted by pure intelligence, and it is nothing more than an image in a mirror. See how you will feel after this conviction. Will you be elated by the accession of a dominion, or depressed by the death of a relative in your dream? Realize that the self is the self-contained mirror projecting and manifesting this world. The self is pure unblemished consciousness. Be quick. Realize it quickly, and gain transcendental happiness. Having heard the sage's son, Mahasina began to think clearly and seriously. He concluded the world to be dreamlike, and overcame his grief. Growing strong in mind, he was not perturbed. Then he asked his companion, Great and wise saint, you know this world and beyond. I do not believe that there is anything that you do not know. Please answer me now. How can you say that the whole is pure imagination. However much I may imagine, my imagination does not materialize. But you have created a universe by the force of your will. And yet, how do time and space differ in these creations? Please tell me. On being thus asked, the sage's son replied, the will conceives either effectively or ineffectively, according to whether it is uniform or broken up by indecision. Do you not know this world to be the result of Brahma's desire? This looks real and permanent because the original desire is so powerful. Whereas the world of your creation no one takes seriously, and your own mistrust makes it useless. Conceptions materialize for various reasons as follows. By virtue of the natural function, as with Brahma the creator, by the possession of live jhans, as with Yakshas and Rakshasas, classes of celestial beings, by the use of herbs, as with gods. Nectar is reputed to contain the extracts of superb herbs, by the practice of yoga, as with yogis, by the miraculous power of incantations, as with a few siddhas, by the force of penance, as with some sages, and by virtue of boons, as with the architect of the universe, Viswakarma. One should forget the old associations, in order to make one's new conception effective, and this endures only so long as it is not obstructed by the old one. A conception is forceful, unless obstructed by an antecedent one, and thus destroyed. It is effective only when forceful. In that way even great things may be achieved. Your conceptions do not materialize for the aforesaid reason. Therefore you must practice the focusing of thought, if you desire your own creations to endure. I shall tell you now about the difference in time and space. You are not proficient in the affairs of the world, and therefore you are mystified. I shall now make it clear how these differences appear. The sun helps all to see, but blinds the owls. Water is the abode of fishes, but drowns man. Fire burns a man, but is food to Titiri, a species of bird. Fire is ordinarily put out by water, but it flourishes in the middle of the ocean at the time of dissolution. Similar discrepancies are evident elsewhere. Men and animals engage in activities with their limbs and senses, whereas spirits do so with the bodies of others. Instances like these are innumerable. Their explanation is as follows. Sight is of the eye, and cannot be without it. A jaundiced eye sees everything yellow, and diplopia produces a double image of a single object. Abnormal visions are thus the direct result of abnormal eyes. The Karandakas, in an eastern island, are said to see everything red. So also the inhabitants of Ramanarka Isle see everything upside down. One hears many more strange stories of the kind, all of which are based on abnormalities of vision. They can all be remedied by proper treatment. The same applies to other senses, including the mind. The relation between space and objects, and between time and events is according to your estimate of them. There is no intrinsic relationship between them. Having so far proved the objects and events to be only within, he proceeds to establish that there is no exterior to the self. What is designated as exterior by people is simply the origin and prop of the universe, like the screen and its relation to the picture on it. There could be nothing external to that exterior except it be one's own body. How can that be externalized from the exterior? For example, when you say outside the hill is withdrawn from the space beyond, it is not included in it. But the body is seen in space just as a pot is seen. The body must therefore be external to the seer. What is visible lies within the range of illumination. If without, it cannot be seen. Therefore the illumined objects must be within the vision of the illuminant. The body, etc., are the illumined, because they are themselves objectified. The illumined and the illuminant cannot be identical. Again, the illuminant cannot be objectified, for who is the seer apart from it? And how can the illumination by which he sees be apart from him? That the illuminant affords the light, and serves as an object standing apart from the seer, is impossible to maintain. Therefore the illuminant cannot admit of any foreign admixture in it, and he is the illumination in perfection, only one, and the being of all. He extends as time and space. They are infinite and perfect, being involved as the illuminant, illumination and the illumined. As regards within or without, everything is included in illumination. How then can anything be outer, unless it is like a peak on a mountain? The whole universe is thus in the illumination which shines self-sufficient, by itself, everywhere, and at all times. Such illumination is her transcendental majesty Tripura, the Supreme. She is called Brahma in the Vedas, Vishnu by the Vaisnavites, Shiva by the Saivites, and Sakti by the Saktas. There is indeed nothing but she. She holds everything by her prowess as a mirror does its images. She is the illuminant in relation to the illumined. The object is sunk in illumination like the image of a city in a mirror. Just as the city is not apart from the mirror, so also the universe is not apart from consciousness. Just as the image is part and parcel of the clear, smooth, compact and one mirror, so also the universe is part and parcel of the perfect, solid and unitary consciousness, namely the self. The world cannot be demonstrably ascertained. Space is simply void, serving for the location of materials. The universe is, always and all through, a phenomenon in the self. The question then arises how consciousness, being void, is dense at the same time. Just as a mirror, though dense and impenetrable, contains the image, so also pure consciousness is dense and impenetrable, and yet displays the universe by virtue of its self-sufficiency. Though consciousness is all-pervading, dense and single, it still holds the mobile and immobile creation within it, wonderful in its variety, with no immediate or ultimate cause for it. Just as the mirror remains unaffected by the passage of different images, and yet continues to reflect as clearly as before, so also the one consciousness illumines the waking and dream states which can be verified by proper meditation. O King, examine again your daydreams and mental imagery. Though they are perfect in detail, yet they are no less mental. Consciousness permeating them obviously remains unblemished before creation, or after dissolution of the world. Even during the existence of the world, it remains unaffected as the mirror by the images. Though unperturbed, unblemished, thick, dense and single, the absolute consciousness being self-sufficient manifests within itself what looks exterior, just like a mirror reflecting space as external to itself. This is the first step in creation. It is called ignorance or darkness. Starting as an infinitesimal fraction of the whole, it manifests as though external to its origin, and is a property of the ego sense. The alienation is on account of the latent tendencies to be manifested later. Because of its non-identity with the original consciousness, it is now simple, insentient energy. Note: the commentary has it. What is absolute consciousness goes under the name of Maya just before creation, and is later called the Vidya, or ignorance, with the manifestation of the ego. The agitation in the quietness is due to subtle time fructifying the latent tendencies of the ego, which had not merged in the primordial state at the time of the dissolution of the universe. That consciousness which illumines the exterior is called Siva-tattva, whereas the individual feeling as I is Sakti-tattva. Note: Siva is awareness of the exterior. Sakti is the dynamic force operating the potential tendencies in the individual self. When the awareness of the exterior, combined with the I, encompasses the entire imagined space as I, it is called Siva-tattva. When, later, discarding the abstraction of the self and the exterior, clear identification with the insentient space takes place, it is called Ishvara-tattva. The investigation of the last two steps is pure vidya, knowledge. All these 5 tattvas are pure, because they relate to an as yet undifferentiated condition, like potentialities in a seed. After the differentiation is made manifest by Wolfus, the insentient part predominates over the other, as opposed to the contrary condition before. That insentient predominance is called Maya Sakti, after differentiation is clearly established, like the sprout from a seed. The sentient phase now contracts, being relegated to a minor position, and takes on the name of Purusha, being covered by 5 sheaths, namely Kala, something of doership, Vidya, some knowledge, Raga, desire, Kala, time, allotted life, and Niyati, fixed order of things. An amnesis of individuals made up of the proclivities acquired as a result of engaging in diverse actions in previous births, is now supported by intelligence and remains as Prakriti, nature. This Prakriti is tripartite, because the fruits of actions are of 3 kinds. She manifests as the 3 states of life, wakefulness, dream and deep sleep. She then assumes the name, Chitta, mind. The anamnesis goes by the name of Prakriti in dreamless slumber, and Chitta in the other states. It is always comprised of the insentient phase of the proclivities of the mind, and the sentient phase of intelligence. When the proclivities still remain in abeyance without being used up, its totality is called avyakta, unmanifested. Differences arise only in Chitta. There is no difference among individuals in sleep, and so it is Prakriti, the same assuming the name of Chitta when difference is manifest. Note: sleep is characterized by undifferentiation, and so it is the same for all, irrespective of propensities of the mind. Simultaneous with the awareness of the body, the other states manifest. Individual enjoyments, pleasure and pain, lie only in the wakeful and dream states, according as the innate tendencies of the mind mature and yield fruits. When one crop is over, sleep supervenes, and then there is no enjoyment, and no distinction according to crops. As the anamnesis is ready with the next crop, sleep is shaken off and differences arise. So it is clear how the one undifferentiated condition manifests as the universe in all its diversity and resolves into itself periodically. Therefore the mind, Chitta, is Purusha, the individual, when the sentient phase is assertive, and the same is avyakta, unmanifest, when Prakriti, nature, the insentient phase, is assertive. That Chitta is tripartite according to its functions, namely, ego, intellect, and mind. When influenced by the 3 qualities, it manifests in greater details as follows. By sattva, brightness, it becomes the 5 senses, hearing, sight, touch, taste, and smell. By rajas, activity, speech, hands, feet, organs of excretion and of procreation. By tamas, darkness, earth, air, fire, water, and ether. The Supreme Intelligence coquettes with the universe in this manner, remaining all the time unaffected, a witness of its own creation. The present creation is the mental product of Brahma or Hiranyagarbha, appointed creator by the wolfus of the primal being, Sri Tripura. The cognition you and I is the essence of any kind of creation. Such cognition is the manifestation of transcendental consciousness. There cannot be any difference, just as there is no difference in space, bounded by a pot or not bounded by it. The diversities in creation are solely due to qualifications limiting the consciousness. These qualifications, e.g., body, limiting of age, are the mental imagery of the Creator, consistent with the individual's past merits. When the creative will force wears away, there is dissolution and complete undifferentiation results. As for your willpower, it is overpowered by the Creators. When that impediment, Maya's veiling, is surmounted by the methods already mentioned, your willpower will also become effective. Time, space, gross creations, etc., appear in it according to the imagery of the agent. A certain period is only 1 day according to my calculation, whereas it is 12,000 years according to Brahma. The space covered by about 2 miles and a half of Brahma is infinite according to me, and covers a whole universe. In this way, both are true and untrue at the same time. Similarly also, imagine a hill within you, and also time in a subtle sense. Then contemplate a whole creation in them. They will endure, as long as your concentration endures, even to eternity for all practical purposes, if your willpower be strong enough. Therefore I say, that this world is a mere figment of imagination. O King, It shines in the manifest conscious self within. Therefore what looks like the external world is really an image on the screen of the mind. Consciousness is the screen and the image, and so yogis are enabled to see long distances of space and realize long intervals of time. They can traverse all distance in a moment, and can perceive everything as readily as a gooseberry in the hollow of one's palm. Therefore recognize the fact that the world is simply an image on the mirror of consciousness, and cultivate the contemplation of I am, abide as pure being, and thus give up this delusion of the reality of the world. Then you will become like myself, one in being, self-sufficient. Dattatreya continued. On hearing this discourse of the sage's son, the king overcame his delusion. His intellect became purified, and he understood the ultimate goal. Then he practiced samadhi, and became self-contained, without depending on any external agency, and led a long and happy life. He ceased to identify himself with the body, and became absolute as transcendental space until he was finally liberated. So you see, Bhargava, that the universe is only a mental image, just as firm as one's willpower, and no more. It is not independent of the self. Investigate the matter yourself, and your delusion will gradually lose hold of you and pass off. This ends the story of the Hills Tea in Tripura Rahasya.